how great was it to get the news, full news that Ben is okay, and what are you able to divulge about what fully happened and what his availability might be going forward?
Yeah, availability, we'll just have to see. I think that's going to be a process to kind of, physically get him back to where he's capable of getting back on the football field. But I mean, obviously as frustrating as Saturday was with the result, I think the greatest news ever was it was a major scare more than it was, something that could have been really, really scary. And so, it was, I think how he's handled has been incredible. I honestly, even how our kids handled it, I don't know if I've ever been in that stadium and felt that during my tenure here. And, how our kids responded, Ben and his family responded, how our medical staff responded. I think all those things you're just really grateful for because you've seen scary moments in football over the past, 4 or 5 years. So, again, everybody's concern, we're really grateful for. A lot of people have reached out, and I really appreciate that. But I think, we got really lucky, and that's probably the best way to maybe describe it, and really the response from it, to have Ben back here and back home on Saturday night, those were major wins.
And you've used the word curious or curiosity a lot over the years, and what's the value of that? Because it can apply when you're on a winning streak, can apply when you're on a losing streak, and it's the difference between probably just going, versus why is this happening kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I think the thing about that is you're so right. I mean, you're talking even with where we're at as a football team right now, there's so many good things happening. And that's the hard thing, right, is, you're curious of how do you get that. I said inches last week. We're probably at what's centimeters. I mean, you're talking, just, a fabric away from being where you want to be. And yet the reality of it is there's unique challenges, and the challenges have been fast and furious, and every game is different. Every challenge with the roster and what's going on is completely unique and different. And, that's coaching, and that's team, and that's playing. And I think what I love about our kids is, our toughness and our resolve. I don't know if you saw it last year, but I think you're seeing it even in a more powerful way right now. And so for me, it's an absolute joy of staying curious. Man, how do we keep giving this team the best opportunity every Saturday to, take the next step to get a win? And how do you make sure, everything you've built this program on is, not really worrying about the result, understanding that this is a process, understand why you are gaining or not gaining the result that you absolutely want, but understand, this is a journey, and how do you keep working through it? And that's the fun thing. It's been really awesome to watch our kids respond, and we'll keep responding.
Those really good things you just mentioned, what are a couple you want to highlight?
Jeez, I think how our defense played last week with the amount of guys that were out and continue to be out. You were at times without your top 5 defensive backs, and how that group played. I thought, freshman Josh Patterson played a really good football game. What Marcus Neal did Saturday was maybe as good a safety play as you've seen here in 10 years. I think, the leadership that's really starting to emerge within our walls through how some guys are playing through really hard stuff right now. And, from a physical standpoint, and their toughness and resolve. So there is a lot of really positive things, I think, that I see, that we see as a coaching staff. That's why it's been a joy for us to, really not waver at what's happened with the end result, and sprint back here and help these guys continue to figure out a way forward. And I think that part's been really unique because it's going to take team. We're in some tough spots as we've been through really the last 5-6 weeks in terms of having the team that you had early in the season to having a different team, and each week you kind of got to figure out a new plan to give your team the chance to have success. And I think we have. We've done a great job of that. We just haven't been able to finish the job. And so that's something that I think we're all after and all hungry for in the betterment of this group and these kids.
You said Saturday that you thought, other than the pick, which obviously came in a really weird spot for Rocco, that he played spectacular. Did that show up for you when you rewatch the film?
Yeah, I think playing really good football. I think, our consistency globally on the offensive side of the football has to be better. But again, there's a lot of guys working through a lot of things on that side right now. I think, again, from my end of it, what Rocco is doing is he's certainly giving us a chance to win every Saturday. I mean, it's what he's done since he's, played here every single game. So, again, that position gets magnified anytime, whether you win or whether you lose. It's just the world we live in. But, what I couldn't be prouder of is his toughness, his grit, and his work through, through the ups and downs of feeling, the challenge of winning and losing a football game. But I think he's playing really good football.
It does seem like he was missing throws that we've seen him consistently make over 2.5 years. Are you guys seeing, is it a mechanical? Is it being on the same page with his wide receivers? Is it fluky, or what are you guys seeing?
Yeah, I just think there's probably a little bit of everything. I think our protection probably at times has been, maybe not as consistent as it could have been or has been, early in the football season. I think you're certainly working through. I think the receivers would say, man, there's a couple plays we could have made, and I think Rocco would say, man, there's a couple throws I would love to have had back. But I think when you're sitting there living in the margins and the inches right now, man, you got to be able to have a little bit more consistency globally, and I think that's a global thing offensively. That's getting down to the 2-yard line. That's converting in the red zone. That's not just a quarterback thing. I think that's a team thing. But I think the whole piece of it, and I think you can say, man, 3rd and 4, and we got a chance to get off the field. We got a guy there. We got to wrap and make the tackle, and it's an 88-yard touchdown. And we've got one of the best kickers in the country, and we get a fluky snap, and man, we got to get the hold down. It's just we're living in those inches right now where our consistency of fundamental and detail got to be a little bit better. Great question.
Matt, can you please set the stage or share the emotions you felt when you first interacted with Ben after he got out of the hospital? Was it later that night on Saturday? Was it another day? And just what was that moment like for you two? Well,
as much joy as I have coming in here and speaking to this group after a loss, as soon as I got done with that, really I went over to the hospital and was with Ben and his family. So, it was great to see Ben. He was in a really good spot. Honestly, as Ben was getting carted off, he said, man, I'll be back out here in a couple minutes. If you know Ben, that's Ben. I at least felt like he was in a good spot leaving the stadium. But it was really good to get over there to see him in a great spot. He was getting discharged as I was getting over there. So, to me, the relief of what he means to our program, what he's about, it doesn't matter if it's Ben Bramer or any young man in our football program. I mean, the reality of it is those are really scary situations, and those are really challenging, and that's part of football sometimes. And I think watching Jim Boniface rally our football team, in prayer on the sideline was powerful. Watching Ben, react on Sunday with our football team was powerful. And again, we all are concerned about winning and losing, and I get it. But buddy, that's what makes football really special, and that's what I'm really grateful for. So Ben was awesome getting discharged. His grandparents were here, his sisters were here, his mom was here. It was great to see them, the relief of, man, my son's okay, and walking out of the hospital kind of gave you a little perspective on Saturday night too.
And with David Coffey in his start last week, what did you see from him in practice that warranted that spot, and what do you think of his play?
Yeah, I thought David did a really good job. Got dinged up, and we didn't have him available for the second half of the game. And hopefully I think he'll be back ready to rock and roll this week. But man, David's a young man that's got great talent, and has played a little bit on special teams. Has been really starting to come on. I think the one thing that we got great belief of, I think he's a really good cover corner. He's got great vision. He plays confident, and I think he earned the right to get on the football field. So it's a nice thing that as tough of the spot we are in the secondary, there's still competition, and there's still guys that are, challenging to get on the football field. And not only are they challenging, they're getting on the field, and they're doing some really good things. So I thought David played really well in the first half of the game for sure.
Matt, can you talk about the challenge Josh Hoover and this TCU pass offense is going to give you?
Yeah. I think, again, you're kind of going into a different game this week than maybe what we were going to play last week. You're going to play a group that is, again, very skilled. And, I think Josh is a young man that's been in this offense now 2.5 years, really made his first kind of major go at it here, 2 years ago, and has really kind of taken the reins since. And, I think what you see is a veteran quarterback that's got great command of the offense, and he's got great talent around him. A couple of those transfer receivers have really come on big for him. They've got size, they've got ability on the outside, and then they complement themselves really good with the run game. I think those two backs do a really great job running the football. A veteran offensive line, those guys are playing good football, and they've got the ability to tempo you, kind of spread you out, and really try to make you play in space. And we'll have to do a great job tackling in space as well as covering in space.
Coach, you've mentioned Jim Boniface as a great leader for this team several times, including obviously Ben's injury being a great example. As this team goes through a rough stretch, how important is his leadership and the leadership of your other team captains and leaders?
Yeah, I think that is leadership. I think sometimes we get swung in the world of real leadership happens when things aren't going well. And one of the great things that, it's like, man, why are you so positive about where you're at? Man, you walk in that locker room and you see the guys, and you walk in here on Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and the guys that are leading this football program, man, you're really grateful to be here, to be with these humans. And, Jim is one of those. I think our senior leadership have done a great job, but, Jim's one of those guys that really even started at the retreat early on before the season started, just a guy that had such humility about, man, you lose your starting job a year ago, you never flinch, you never waver, you go back to work, he puts on 20 pounds, and he is having an incredible year. I think he's played with as much consistency and excellence as I've seen at the center position. And for me, it's so awesome to watch, because that still is our sport. We all want instant gratification. We all want the end result, but so few of us are willing to work through the good days and the tough days to get there. And I think when you have a guy like that that's leading the way, that said, man, listen, I battled real adversity, and we're going to work through these things. It's a shining example of what our football program needs to be about, and it really has been about over the last 10 years.
Over the past month, that running game has been averaging over like 4 yards a carry. How consistent has that, kind of rushing game been? And is that something that you could maybe lean on a little bit more?
Yeah, I certainly think it has been a foundation, of course, over the last 4 to 5 weeks. And again, I think you go back and you look at the veteranness on that group too, right? Those are all guys that have played a lot of football here. You talk about the offensive line and the amount of snaps that those guys have played. You certainly talk about Abu and Carson. I think both those guys are playing excellent, maybe the best they've played in their career. You look at the tight ends and, the amount of snaps those guys played. And so I think no matter what's going on, you want to lean on the veterans. You want to lean on the guys that are the foundation of your football team. And, you've heard me say this a lot, players, formations, plays. Who are those people? And, those guys in our football program we've always tried to lean on those people. And that group certainly has been a foundation for us. Man, a bright spot. I think that group continues to play really, really special football right now. And they're going to need to and continue to do more if needed, to get us to where we want to go and get us over the hump for sure.
Coach, I don't know what the numbers compare to past Novembers, but it seems like you're maybe subbing and playing more guys than in the past. Does that come from injury, or is there something else where you're subbing more?
Well, I don't know what I did to the football gods, but probably wasn't very, somewhere down the line. The injury piece of it is, this is 2 years in a row where it's been really challenging, and that's part of football, and that's part of the sport we play, and especially here, and so I think one of the things that I'm really proud of is, man, the guys that are going into the game, the youth that's being forced to play, kind of like last year, it's a lot of positions, and man, those guys are stepping in ready to play football. I think that to me is one of the great saving graces of where we're at. I think it's one of the great, as we'll get through this and get ourselves where we need to be and want to be, one of the great opportunities is the amount of guys that are getting to play quality reps right now in some critical moments and critical opportunities. And whether it's a success or a failure, you feel like these guys keep growing forward. And I don't see many of our guys in our football program taking steps back right now, and that part's really encouraging for myself and I think our staff.
Good afternoon, Coach. I've noticed in the last 2 weeks that Rocco's played with a brace on his shoulder. It looks like, just what kind of toughness is he displaying throughout, the last month to continue to go out there and try his best to lead his team?
Yeah, you guys will have no idea. That guy's as tough as they come. And so the reality of it is, like, and again, that's our sport. Like, the only time you feel good is you usually feel good in football, and like we started July 23rd, so usually it's like August 2nd, but that's like when you feel good. We got to feel good at July 23rd, and you're not usually going to feel really good the rest of the way out. And obviously sometimes at different positions that can be unique challenges, and certainly Rocco has worked through some real physical challenges through the course of the season, and yet has never flinched and never wavered. And again, I think that's what's so impressive about what I see from him right now is, boy, from a physical standpoint, yes, he maybe didn't make some plays, but I think we should not look at some of the major plays that he made and what he's doing out there. And like I said, I think he's making a lot of plays that's given our team a chance to win. And his guts, his toughness, his courage, I think those are all things that, again, great leaders have the ability to do, and he's certainly done that in a really powerful way for us.
You talked about David's play last week. How about Tayshawn? What's his status? Any other guys back there hurt, or like any other spots coming out of last week?
Yeah, we'll see. Tayshawn will be out for a little while. He unfortunate just because he's been playing great football. Obviously we didn't have him last week. Josh stepped in, played really good football. I think Van Dinter's played a lot of football. Those two guys I thought really played well in the game on Saturday. I think after that, I think the rest of that group hopefully will be intact. But that was obviously a tough blow. But again, man, to watch those guys step in and play really well, I thought that was awesome.
One last question. Following up on the substitution question, do you feel like more guys playing has made it maybe more difficult to find rhythm?
Yeah, I don't. I think some of the challenges of, what we've had to go through this year probably have that team rhythm that we have to play in have been a real challenge, at least over the course of the last 4 weeks. And, those aren't excuses, those are realities. And it's forced guys to have to step in. And, when we win football games here, we win as a team. We're playing in rhythm offensively, defensively, and on special teams. And, we have been a hair off in some of those areas. And some of those areas are due to some really tough injuries that, guys that had experience were executing at a really high rate. And now there's some, there have been some new guys that have had to go in and work through it. So, yeah, those aren't excuses. Those are realities, and that's where coaching's got to be great, and we got to do a great job of helping those guys be their best. So those are our responsibility. And again, I know I said this last week. It's why they call you a team. You got to win with team football, and that's how we'll win. It's how we'll get through it, and have great expectations that we've got a great opportunity again this coming Saturday. So.